have you ever found yourself talking maybe about career choices or your life plans, and suddenly you hear it? That phrase may be something like, "But what will people say?"
No, that's a classic.
Right. Or perhaps, "Why can't you just be more like Sharma Kabeda?" That impossibly perfect neighbor's child who's always like excelling at everything.
Oh, absolutely. The gold standard.
Exactly. So if those kinds of phrases hit home for you, well, you've likely experienced that very unique blend. It's endearing sometimes, yeah, but also baffling. And let's be honest, often undeniably hilarious, that whole dynamic of things Desi parents say.
Definitely. And it's really much more than just, a collection of funny sayings. It's actually a pretty profound cultural phenomenon.
It really is. Like a shared inside joke, resonates with millions of people globally, and, well, it's become a huge source of comedic material.
Indeed. And these expressions, they aren't just random amusing quirks. They're really densely packed. We're talking layers of history, deep-seated psychology, and some pretty complex cultural dynamics.
Right.
They resonate so powerfully partly because they touch on these almost universal immigrant experiences, that fascinating, often challenging collision between deeply held traditions and totally new environments, and also the subtle art, really, of navigating these bicultural identities.
And that's exactly where we're headed today. We're doing a deep dive into things Desi parents say, a cultural comedy analysis.
Now, our mission here isn't just, to share a few laughs, though I promise you there will probably be plenty of those along the way.
I hope so.
But what we really want to do is unpack the profound historical roots, the psychological underpinnings, the sociological factors behind this global comedic trope. We really aim to help you understand why. Why do these particular phrases, these specific situations, why do they resonate so deeply? What do they genuinely reveal about identity, about family bonds, and about that incredible, often really challenging journey of adaptation in a new land? Yeah, get ready for some hopefully insightful aha moments, because we're about to show you how these seemingly simple jokes are in fact incredibly profound windows into a vibrant, constantly evolving culture.
Okay, so let's really get into this, because to genuinely understand the humor and its depth, we first have to journey back through history.
Right.
This comedic trope, it's not some recent invention that just popped up with, the internet. It's deeply, deeply rooted.
Absolutely.
We're talking centuries of cultural and historical undercurrents that shaped family structures, societal expectations. These were systems that were, profoundly patriarchal, weren't they? And hierarchical.
Very much so.
Can you just imagine for a second a world where the very structure of your family dictated almost everything about your life? Like your career path, who you married, setting these incredibly strict norms for behavior, for expectations, that must have felt almost, unchangeable.
Precisely. If you look at the pre-colonial era in the Indian subcontinent, the joint family system was the pervasive norm. And this was much more than just, multiple generations living under one roof. It was the fundamental social unit, the economic unit, even the emotional unit, and parental authority within that system. It wasn't just respected, it was basically unquestionable. Elders were revered. They were seen as the ultimate custodians of family honor, of tradition, of collective wisdom.
So your own identity was kind of secondary.
In many ways, yes. Your individual identity, your very sense of self-worth, was inextricably intertwined with your family's reputation, what's known as izzat. There was this inherent, deeply ingrained expectation of obedience, of personal sacrifice for the collective good of the family unit.
Wow.
So this foundation laid a very strong, you could say rigid template for the parenting ideals that would then endure for generations. Think of it like a deeply communal contract. Individual desires were often, expected to be subsumed by the needs of a larger group.
Okay, and then comes this absolutely monumental shift. The British Raj. We're talking, 1858 to 1947?
That's right.
And this wasn't just a political takeover, was it? It sounds like it layered a whole new set of values, a specific cultural blueprint, right onto these existing Desi traditions.
Exactly. The British introduced Victorian moral codes, a strong emphasis on public decorum, rigid social hierarchies, and a very particular kind of, respectability politics.
Respectability politics, right.
And this wasn't subtle. It permeated society. It dictated not just, how you dressed or spoke, but crucially, it reshaped what was considered proper parenting. Education systems were reformed, often to produce loyal subjects. English became the language of power, of aspiration. New societal benchmarks for success, for moral conduct, were firmly established.
So you had these already really traditional Desi norms. And now they're infused with this extra layer of like British formality, decorum, maybe even a bit of puritanical rigidity.
Yes, exactly. It created this hybrid, this really complex blend of expectations that often pulled in different directions. It was a fascinating but incredibly complex cultural merging.
I can imagine.
And this historical layering meant that when families faced new challenges, especially during times of huge social upheaval, they often defaulted to a very conservative, risk-averse approach, sticking to what was seen as traditional or respectable, which was now this blend of old and new. It became a pathway to success, and maybe more importantly, to safety, to social standing.
Right.
And this kind of foundational conservatism, it would later show up quite clearly in specific parental behaviors and expectations, especially as these families started to move around the globe, and navigate totally new cultural landscapes.
And they definitely did globalize, didn't they? Often under really traumatic circumstances. I mean, the mid-20th century, especially that incredibly tumultuous period of partition, 1947 to 71.
One devastating period.
Immense trauma, displacement, economic uncertainty across the subcontinent. Just imagine the sheer anxiety, the profound loss of home, of identity, the devastating uncertainty millions experienced.
It's hard to fully grasp.
In this period, it sounds like a deeply reinforced, kind of hyperprotective, often very anxious parent archetype. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. The parents who had survived that kind of upheaval, witnessing the loss of livelihoods, homes, entire social structures naturally, their focus shifted. It became about securing stability, safety, and a demonstrably better life for their children.
Which often meant pushing them towards certain paths.
Yes, often steering them towards specific, well-defined paths. Secure education, stable government jobs, or highly respected professions like medicine or engineering. These were seen as bulwarks, protection against future uncertainty. And this protective, almost survivalist instinct, it got dramatically amplified during the large-scale South Asian migration waves. We're talking the 1970s through the 1990s. Millions moved to the West, the UK, North America, the Gulf countries, and they found themselves in entirely new cultural landscapes, new languages, new economic systems.
A huge adjustment.
Massive. And in these foreign lands, these diasporic communities often clung even more fiercely to those traditional values. They saw them as essential anchors.
Right, something familiar.
Exactly. It became a crucial way to maintain their identity, their cultural integrity, their sense of community, especially when facing rapid change, potential discrimination, and that immense pressure to assimilate. So this environment, cultural preservation in foreign lands, combined with all those earlier historical layers, it really created the fertile ground for that cross-cultural friction, which would eventually become, for the next generation, comedic gold.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much of that historical anxiety, that deep-seated need for protection, for stability, how much of that might be subconsciously passed down through generations?
Oh, absolutely.
Influencing parenting styles, even when the immediate threats like displacement or severe economic hardship are long gone. They become these ingrained behavioral patterns.
It's a powerful, often invisible undercurrent shaping modern families.
Yeah, it really is.
And what's truly fascinating is seeing how all these complex historical threads finally culminate in the cultural phenomenon we're actually discussing today. From the early 2000s onwards, as first and second generation immigrants grew up basically straddling these two distinct worlds, the traditional values of their parents, the individualistic norms of their Western surroundings, they started to find a really powerful voice.
Real comedy.
Primarily, yes. They started using stand-up comedy, internet memes, short YouTube skits to poke fun at these very intergenerational clashes. What was once maybe a source of deep personal tension or private family friction, it transformed into this widely shared comedic experience. A collective way to process and articulate their unique bicultural identities.
Like a communal sigh of relief.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Often followed by laughter. Yeah.
And here's something really profound, maybe often overlooked. This wasn't entirely a brand new form of expression, was it?
Not entirely, no.
Long before the internet, before stand-up comedy really took off in this way, the underlying tensions, the subtle critiques of, say, parental authoritarianism, they were already present in early Urdu literature, right?
That's a fascinating point, yes. If you think about the works of someone like Ismat Chutai, for instance, in stories like Lihaf, the quilt, or Terhi Lakir, the crooked line, she subtly explored the restrictive societal norms, the unspoken frustrations within patriarchal households. That included the often unquestioned authority of elders. While her work wasn't overtly comedic, her narratives definitely revealed the very pressures, the desires for individual agency that would much later become the fodder for modern humor.
Wow. So this reveals a really critical point then. While the format of the comedy, the memes, the TikToks, is contemporary, it's digital. The underlying issues, those high expectations, the intergenerational friction, that yearning for autonomy against ingrained traditions, the subtle resistance to rigid norms, they've been an integral part of the cultural conversation for a really long time.
Precisely. The humor, then, isn't just some passing trend. It's a contemporary manifestation, a new language for a deep-seated cultural tension that has evolved and simmered for centuries.
A powerful echo from the past.
Expressed through the voices of today.
Yeah, okay. So we've meticulously laid out that historical groundwork for this unique comedic trope. Now let's pivot a bit. Let's delve into the why from a psychological perspective, and maybe a sociological one too. Because at its very core, this humor reflects a classic, often really intense tension, doesn't it? That fundamental push and pull between deeply ingrained collectivist values and the pervasive ideals of Western individualism.
That is the central psychological and sociological dynamic at play here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Desi parents, often deeply rooted in those historical family structures we discussed, where the family unit was paramount, they tend to emphasize values like family honor, is that
right.
Selfless sacrifice for the collective good, group harmony, unwavering obedience to elders. And this aligns perfectly with Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory.
Okay, Hofstede's theory. Tell us a bit about that. Sure. Hofstede was a renowned social psychologist, and he systematically contrasted collectivist societies where group cohesion, loyalty, interdependent relationships are paramount with individualist ones. Individualist societies prioritize personal autonomy, self-reliance, individual achievement. So you essentially have cultures where the we is dominant, where your identity is defined by your place within the group, meeting cultures where the I takes center stage and identity is forged through personal choices and accomplishments.
That's a huge difference.
It's a fundamental difference in worldview, and it's a constant source of friction.
That's a really clear way to frame it. Maybe to make that abstract concept even more relatable for you listening. Imagine like a highly disciplined orchestra performing.
Yeah.
Every single musician plays for the harmony of the entire ensemble, right? Following the conductor's lead, maybe sacrificing individual solo moments for the collective beauty of the symphony. That's kind of a collectivist mindset.
Good analogy.
Now compare that to, say, a freestyle jazz improvisation. Each musician expresses their unique voice, explores individual creativity, stands out as an individual. That's more like individualism. So when parents from that symphony mindset raise kids who are encouraged by the surrounding society to embrace jazz improvisation, you can immediately see where the discord, the often humorous friction comes from.
That's an excellent analogy. It vividly illustrates the core difference. And this dynamic brings us directly to what another social psychologist, Harry Triandis, observed about cultural differences in how people are socialized. He noted that children in collectivist cultures, like many Desi communities, tend to internalize parental expectations, group norms, the pressure for conformity, far more deeply than their counterparts in individualistic societies.
Ah, okay. So it goes deeper.
Much deeper. This inherent difference in how values are absorbed and identity is formed creates what we call intergenerational acculturation gaps. And this isn't just about, differing opinions on something superficial like music taste or fashion.
Right.
It's about fundamentally divergent frameworks for understanding yourself, your purpose, your obligations to your family, your place in the world. When these children grow up immersed in Western individualistic societies, this gap can lead to significant friction, profound confusion, and often deep internal conflict and identity struggles for the younger generation. They're constantly code switching between these two contrasting worlds.
And that profound friction, that persistent internal conflict, that must create a tremendous amount of psychological stress, right?
Absolutely.
We're talking about deep-seated guilt maybe for not meeting parental expectations, shame for perceived failures, that constant fear of disappointing your parents, even the pervasive anxiety of just not living up to seemingly impossible standards, academic, professional.
All of the above.
So given all that emotional weight, how does comedy of all things step in? How does it become a mechanism to process these really complex emotions?
That's precisely where the genius, and you could even say the therapeutic power, of this comedic trope lies. Comedy about Desi parenting serves as an incredibly powerful and necessary release valve for younger generations.
Release valve, okay.
It provides a safe, often lighthearted space to externalize that internal psychological stress, all that guilt, shame, fear, and it transforms it into a bonding ritual. Think about it. When you see a skit or a meme or a stand-up routine that perfectly captures an experience you previously thought was unique, maybe even isolating to your own family, you suddenly realize you are absolutely not alone. And this shared understanding, this collective recognition of a common struggle, it creates an immediate sense of camaraderie.
Right, that connection.
Exactly. Shared laughter, in this specific context, acts as a crucial social glue for communities negotiating these often challenging bicultural identities. It creates solidarity, a profound sense of belonging, and a collective understanding that transcends individual experiences.
Right.
It makes the burden feel lighter, more manageable.
It's absolutely true. Sometimes laughter really is the only way to effectively process these profound cultural differences and the significant emotional weight that comes with them. It allows you to kind of step back from the intensity, find commonality, universality in your unique experience, and then, crucially, maybe move forward with a bit more perspective, a bit more resilience.
Well put. It takes something deeply personal, often emotionally fraught, and makes it universally relatable within the community, turning potential isolation into connection.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. We're here in 2025. You might think, with all the rapid global shifts, increasing multiculturalism, evolving generational perspectives, maybe this trope would have faded, become like quaint history.
You might think that, yeah.
But no, it remains wildly, unapologetically relevant. It's not just surviving, it feels like it's thriving, doesn't it? On platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, it dominates stand-up specials, weaves its way into mainstream media. I mean, have you scrolled through your feed recently? Have you seen those countless skits about parents comparing their kids to Sharma that ubiquitous, often mythical, neighbor's child who embodies impossible perfection, academics, career, even marital status?
Oh, constantly. Sharma lives on.
Right. Or maybe encountered that timeless, almost universal refrain. When I was your age, I walked 10 miles uphill in the snow, both ways, just to get to school. Or some variation.
Absolutely. Still gets used.
This content is just pervasive. It's deeply embedded in modern media, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And the enduring power of these specific comedic scripts comes from their continued, almost shocking resonance across generations. They tap into incredibly vital contemporary discussions within the South Asian diaspora and increasingly far beyond it.
Like what kind of discussion?
Well, for instance, these jokes are intimately connected to the growing global mental health dialogues. More and more young South Asians are openly discussing generational trauma, the immense pressures of high parental expectations, the emotional toll of navigating those profound acculturation gaps we talked about. These comedic narratives, while often lighthearted on the surface, frequently hint at the deeper psychological and emotional issues simmering beneath. They provide a kind of low-stakes entry point for discussions that might otherwise be considered taboo.
That's a really important point. And it's not just a conversation happening exclusively within the community anymore, is it? These jokes, these relatable scenarios, they've become a significant part of broader immigrant narratives in mainstream media. They're giving voice to experiences that were maybe once marginalized. I mean, think about popular, critically acclaimed series like Netflix's Never Have I Ever. It explicitly centers that cultural clash, right? Between a Desi teenager navigating American high school and her traditional South Indian mother.
A prime example.
Or consider stand-up comedians like Hasan Minhaj, dissecting his immigrant experience with such sharp, observational humor. Or Zarna Garg, who's built a significant part of her career masterfully delivering punchlines based on these very specific, universally understood Desi parent-child dynamics.
They're bringing these unique, often highly specific experiences to a global audience, making them accessible, relatable across cultural divides. It's a powerful form of cultural normalization and representation.
Yeah.
By presenting these often difficult or nuanced family dynamics through the lens of humor, these creators make them accessible not just to those from Desi backgrounds, but really to anyone navigating similar intergenerational or immigrant experiences. And crucially, within the South Asian community itself, this comedy helps to kind of destigmatize conversations around mental health, academic pressure, familial discord, topics that might traditionally be considered taboo or kept strictly private.
So laughter creates that safe space.
A safe, communal space to acknowledge these pressures and tensions without necessarily having to confront them head on in a way that feels threatening or maybe disrespectful to elders.
And here's where we see something really fascinating, a profound shift, I think. We're now witnessing a significant evolution towards self-awareness within the community itself.
How so?
Well, there's this entirely new breed of Desi parents, particularly active on platforms like YouTube and TikTok, who are actually starting to parody themselves.
Ah, yes. I've seen some of that.
They're joining in on the joke, often collaborating with their own children in these viral skits. It signals an evolving understanding of parenting, of cultural identity, even the dynamics of humor itself.
That's huge.
It's no longer just the kids making fun of their parents. The very people being parodied are now actively participating in the humor, turning the mirror back on themselves. That feels like a monumental generational leap.
It really is. This phenomenon of self-parody indicates a remarkable maturity, I think, and a growing cultural confidence within the community. It shows an acknowledgement of the stereotypes, a willingness to engage with them humorously, and perhaps even a strategic way to bridge that generational gap through shared laughter, fostering deeper empathy and understanding on both sides.
Yeah.
It's a clear sign of a dynamic, adapting, evolving culture that is comfortable enough now to laugh at its own complexities, its past rigidities. This active participation from parents themselves is, honestly, a testament to the power of humor in facilitating intergenerational dialogue.
Okay, so we've got all this rich historical context, the psychological insights, the analysis of modern comedy, but it feels absolutely crucial now to address a common, yet often quite simplistic misconception. You know, when you hear these jokes, see these memes, watch these skits, it's maybe all too easy to fall into the trap of thinking that all Desi parents are inherently strict, overbearing, maybe emotionally distant, completely out of touch. But is that really an accurate picture? Is it fair?
That's a fundamentally crucial point for critical thinking, and one we absolutely must interrogate. While the caricatures exist, right? They exist for comedic effect, often exaggerating specific traits for maximum humor. The truth is just far more nuanced, far more complex, far more varied.
Right.
Many Desi parents, particularly those who've navigated decades in the diaspora, adapt incredibly quickly, thoughtfully, to their new environments. They gracefully blend elements of traditional Desi parenting with, progressive Western approaches. To paint them all with a single broad brushstroke based on a comedic trope, that's a profound oversimplification. I'd really encourage listeners to consider the full, complex picture of their lived experiences rather than just relying on easy stereotypes, no matter how funny or relatable they might seem at first glance.
Okay, so if that's the case, what are the deeper, often overlooked roots of these parental behaviors? The ones that sometimes get caricatured as harsh or overprotective or overly demanding. Why might those particular traits have developed so strongly, especially maybe among first-generation immigrants?
Well, the harshest caricatures, the ones that sometimes verge on being judgmental, they often completely overlook the deeply challenging, sometimes traumatic root causes behind certain parental behaviors. We're talking about immense economic precarity that many first-generation immigrants faced when they arrived. The struggle to find stable work, to put food on the table, maybe send money back home.
Yeah, the pressure must have been huge.
Enormous. Then there was the sheer constant migrant stress. Navigating a new country, often learning a new language, understanding unfamiliar bureaucratic systems, securing a livelihood from scratch, often while facing discrimination. And underpinning all of that was an overwhelming, almost existential desire for cultural survival, to ensure their children retained their heritage in a foreign land.
So it was about protection.
Largely, yes. In that kind of environment, holding on to what they knew, ensuring their children had a stable, secure, upwardly mobile future, often through those very specific, traditionally respected paths like medicine, engineering, law. It wasn't just a preference. It was often seen as a primary survival strategy. These profound factors, born out of deep love, yes, but also immense fear and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. They could absolutely lead to behaviors that, from an outside perspective, or even a later generational perspective, might seem overprotective or strict.
That adds so much context.
And furthermore, it's vital to remember not all South Asian communities, or even all families within those communities, follow the exact same patterns. Socioeconomic class background matters. Whether a family came from an urban or rural area matters. Specific religious or regional nuances matter greatly in shaping diverse parenting styles.
Right.
The tapestry of Desi parenting is just far richer, far more intricate than any single comedic stereotype can possibly suggest.
This is really where the deep dive helps, isn't it? Moving beyond those surface-level observations into a much richer understanding. Seeing the complex motivations, the historical echoes, the loving intentions maybe behind parental actions. It's about cultivating empathy and context.
Exactly.
But then there's the controversy. There's a debate, right, about whether turning these very real struggles into memes and punchlines actually trivializes genuine issues. Or does it serve to open a much-needed dialogue? Where do people land on that?
This raises a profoundly important question, and it's a vigorous, scholarly debate, actually, within sociology and cultural studies. On one side, you have some scholars, some cultural critics, who argue that turning significant parenting struggles, which can sometimes involve very real emotional neglect, or contribute to mental health stigma, or perpetuate unhealthy dynamics, turning those into mere memes or punchlines can indeed trivialize truly serious issues.
Making light of real pain.
Potentially, yes. It risks inadvertently making light of genuine pain, and might even be seen as a form of sort of internalizing oppression. However, counter to this, others contend, quite powerfully, that comedy, by its very nature, is an incredibly potent tool for opening the door to taboo conversations.
Okay.
It creates a low-stakes, accessible entry point for difficult topics. It makes them approachable, discussable, when perhaps direct confrontation might be too uncomfortable, culturally inappropriate, or even feel threatening within a family structure. So the core question really becomes, can humor effectively be both a coping mechanism and a potential barrier to deeper, more critical conversations? Or does it primarily serve to break new ground and foster understanding?
It sounds like a nuanced debate.
It is. It's a nuanced, ongoing discussion with very valid points on both sides. There isn't really an easy answer.
Okay, let's dig even deeper now and specifically explore what academics are saying about this whole fascinating phenomenon. Because there are some truly insightful theories out there, aren't there? From cultural psychologists, sociologists, that shed considerable light on why these comedic tropes exist, why they resonate so widely, and what they might signify.
Absolutely. One particularly illuminating perspective comes from Dr. G. Ajit Singh. He's a cultural psychologist specializing in diaspora studies, and he suggests that the prevalent Desi parent stereotype, that caricature of strictness, high expectations, control, is essentially an artifact, a direct manifestation of the tight-loose culture theory.
Tight-loose culture theory.
Okay.
Break that down for us.
Sure. So this framework, developed by social scientists, defines tight cultures as societies with strong social norms and a really low tolerance for deviant behavior. They enforce rules, traditions, expectations much more strictly, and there are often clear repercussions for not conforming.
Okay, tight cultures, strict norms.
Right. Loose cultures, on the other hand, have weaker social norms and a much higher tolerance for individual variation. They allow for more personal freedom, more expression. So the perceived rigidity in some Desi parenting styles, as exaggerated in comedy, can be deeply understood through this lens. It's like a tight culture, striving to maintain social order, group cohesion, a collective identity, especially when it finds itself transplanted into a looser, more individualistic environment.
So the contrast makes the tightness even more apparent.
Exactly. This theoretical framework provides a really robust explanation for the deep-seated cultural drivers behind both the parenting styles themselves and, consequently, the humor that's derived from them.
That makes a lot of sense. So a tight culture would naturally provide more material for jokes about strictness and conformity, precisely because that strictness is kind of a built-in feature of its cultural operating system, not just an anomaly.
Precisely. It's a fundamental aspect of how that society functions and how values get transmitted.
Okay, interesting. What other academic perspectives are there?
Well, then we have the compelling insights from Dr. Alvin Alvarez. He's a counseling psychologist whose work focuses on the psychological health of racial and ethnic minorities. He offers another vital perspective. He views humor among minority groups not just as, entertainment, but as a crucial resilience mechanism.
Resilience mechanism.
For communities that might experience significant marginalization or cultural tension or feel caught between different cultural expectations, humor can be an incredibly powerful, almost alchemical tool. It transforms shared experiences of tension, frustration, even systemic challenges into a form of psychological empowerment and communal strength.
How did it do that?
By collectively laughing at their experiences, even the painful or frustrating ones, they reclaim agency, they build community solidarity, and they find a sense of validation in their struggles. It's like a way of saying, we see this, we experience this, and hey, we're in this together.
That is a truly powerful idea. Turning a source of deep tension, something that might otherwise cause significant distress or isolation, turning that into a source of collective strength and connection, Like emotional alchemy, really.
That's a great way to put it, transmuting difficulty into shared understanding and even joy.
Yeah, but there's always a counter-argument, isn't there?
Usually is, yes. And it's essential to consider an important one raised by some sociologists and cultural critics. While this humor can be incredibly beneficial, they warn that overusing these jokes or presenting them without sufficient nuance might inadvertently entrench harmful stereotypes.
Ah, the stereotype trap.
Exactly. There's a tangible risk that it could encourage young people within the community or even outsiders observing the humor to simply see all parent-child conflict within Desi families as just culture. You know, a funny, inescapable, perhaps even charming cultural quirk, instead of addressing potentially toxic behaviors or emotional neglect, or even issues like mental health that require serious, compassionate attention and intervention.
So the humor could become an excuse.
That's the concern, that the humor becomes a convenient excuse to avoid deeper, more difficult conversations about genuine relational issues that might actually transcend mere cultural difference.
This really highlights that delicate tightrope walk again, doesn't it? For creators, for consumers. It's a powerful tool, as we've discussed, but like any powerful tool, it needs to be wielded with careful intention, with critical awareness.
Absolutely. The aim, ideally, is to ensure that the humor fosters genuine understanding and connection, rather than simply perpetuating unhelpful cliches that might ultimately prevent deeper, more critical conversations from happening within families and communities. It's a real challenge to maintain that balance.
Okay, so to really bring all these theories, the historical insights, the psychological underpinnings to life, let's look at some tangible, real-life examples. Things that have exploded in popularity, resonated deeply across the South Asian diaspora. These case studies really vividly illustrate the immense power and the widespread resonance of things Desi parents say.
Definitely. A prime, almost iconic example has to be the Canadian YouTuber Lilly Singh, who became known globally as Superwoman.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Back in, 2019 and even before that, she gained massive global success, partly through her incredibly relatable, sharply observed reenactments of her immigrant mom's phone calls, her daily interactions. These skits, often performed with just uncanny accuracy, captured specific parental demands, anxieties about success, the pressure to get married, seemingly irrational fears about everything from going out too late to not eating enough food.
I remember those, like her How I Deal with My Parents' Expectations video or the Types of Parents series.
Exactly. They precisely highlighted those nagging questions about career, marriage, family expectations, and her ability to perfectly mimic the intonation, the specific phrases like the classic "what will people say," and the underlying emotional dynamics. It made her content universally understood within the South Asian community, and it even resonated with non-Desi audiences who recognized similar intergenerational struggles. Her success was really built on that very specific, culturally nuanced relatability.
I absolutely remember those videos. She completely nailed the details, the dramatic size, the particular way a Desi parent might ask about your life choices, even the subtle passive aggression sometimes. It was just so spot on, you couldn't help but laugh out loud and instantly relate. And it wasn't just about the words, was it? It was the universal experience they represented, that feeling of being caught between two worlds.
Exactly. Another excellent example is the British Pakistani comedian Zeeshan Ali, widely known as Zeeshan comedy. He's built a significant part of his comedic repertoire by basing entire sketches on highly specific, yet universally felt cultural pressures within the Pakistani and broader Desi community.
Like what kind of things?
A quintessential example is his recurring bit on Pakistani moms scolding their kids, particularly daughters, for not being married by the age of 25 or sometimes even earlier. His sketches frequently feature direct quotes like, "Beta, you're getting old, all your cousins are married," or "Why don't you talk to your auntie's son, he's a doctor."
Oh wow, very specific.
Very specific, but widely understood. This particular example underscores the immense specific cultural pressures surrounding marriage, career, family expectations that become incredibly potent comedic fodder. The humor stems directly from that shared recognition of the societal deadline and the parental anxiety it creates.
And then of course there's TikTok, which has just become this unparalleled breeding ground for this kind of short form, highly relatable content, hasn't it? Amplifying these jokes to a truly global scale.
Oh, absolutely. The impact is huge.
Remember that viral TikTok trend where people would lip sync to the iconic line, "Doctor, engineer, or disappointment"?
Yes, that one was everywhere.
It just perfectly distilled those immense career pressures that so many Desi children grow up with, often feeling like those are the only two acceptable professional paths, right?
That trend was particularly fascinating, actually, and impactful because of its ironic and surprisingly positive outcome. What started undoubtedly as a way for the younger generation to playfully vent, to commiserate about parental expectations and that narrow definition of success, it ended up, quite unexpectedly, bridging generations.
How so?
In a remarkable display of cultural evolution, some Desi parents themselves actually started joining in on the joke, lip-syncing to the same audio, often with a humorous, self-deprecating twist, or even reacting humorously to their children's renditions of it.
No way. Parents joining in.
Yes. It showed a significant evolution in how this humor is received and even embraced by the older generation. It signaled a new level of cultural self-awareness, a willingness to engage with the satire.
This is truly where it gets profoundly interesting, isn't it? When the very people being parodied not only acknowledge the jokes, but actively participate in them. It suggests a significant shift in cultural dynamics.
It really does.
It's a sign of a living, evolving culture that can laugh at itself. And maybe in doing so, perhaps even initiate a deeper understanding, maybe even some healing between generations. It transforms a source of tension into a moment of shared, lighthearted connection. You know, when we discuss things Desi parents say and we get into its history and psychology, it's kind of easy to think this whole phenomenon, this specific comedic trope, is entirely unique to South Asian culture.
I can feel that way sometimes.
But what's truly fascinating, I think, is how strikingly similar these intergenerational dynamics and their comedic expressions actually play out in other communities around the world, especially among immigrant populations. It really shows the universality of certain experiences, doesn't it?
You're absolutely right to highlight that. The phenomenon is by no means unique to Desi culture. It's really a testament to these shared human experiences of migration, of acculturation. We see incredible parallels in East Asian communities, for instance. The tiger mom trope is a widely recognized, often humorously portrayed cultural construct there.
Right, the tiger mom.
And this archetype, much like the Desi parent stereotype, emphasizes relentless academic excellence, strict discipline, often through, rote memorization, long hours of study, and immense parental sacrifice for the child's future success. Phrases like, "go practice your piano," or "why aren't you getting straight A's?" are probably as common in East Asian humor as Sharma Ji Ka Beta is in Desi skits. It speaks to that shared, profound focus on upward mobility, on providing the best possible future for the next generation in a new land.
And it's not just East Asian cultures either, is it? You mentioned overlaps in African immigrant communities too.
Yes, incredibly strong overlaps, particularly among communities from West and East Africa. The "when I was your age" script, which is so iconic and relatable in Desi humor. It's an equally common, almost universal refrain there as well, often delivered with similar dramatic flair. Phrases like, "I used to walk miles to school with no shoes," or "you think this is hard, back home we had nothing." They're commonplace. It's clear that strict parenting, often rooted in high expectations, profound discipline, a deep sense of responsibility to ensure the children's success and maintain cultural values. It often emerges as a powerful survival strategy when families are navigating new lands, striving for prosperity against significant odds, and attempting to preserve their heritage.
So these cross-cultural similarities really demonstrate something fundamental.
I think they demonstrate that the core phenomenon where traditional, often collectivist, values rooted in challenging historical contexts meet new individualistic environments, this consistently creates similar intergenerational dynamics, and consequently, strikingly similar forms of humor. These shared comedic tropes, regardless of their specific cultural inflection, illustrate broader immigrant experiences. They emphasize themes of sacrifice, resilience, aspiration, and that constant navigation of dual identities. It reveals a kind of universal thread connecting diverse communities.
Okay, so given these widespread similarities, what does this all mean when we compare it to cultures where this kind of strict parent dynamic and its associated humor isn't nearly as prevalent? What does that contrast tell us?
It profoundly highlights the immense impact of cultural context on both parenting philosophies and the humor derived from them. If you look at, say, Scandinavian cultures, countries like Sweden or Norway, they typically espouse much more egalitarian social norms from a young age. They place a strong emphasis on individual autonomy, self-expression, a less hierarchical family structure.
Very different.
Very different. And consequently, you rarely find this specific genre of strict, overbearing parent comedy. In fact, if there is humor about parenting in those contexts, it might even mock the lack of parental interference, the extreme permissiveness, maybe the sometimes awkward social interactions that arise from an overly hands-off approach.
So jokes about parents being too supportive.
Potentially. Or children being too independent from an early age, creating their own set of unique comedic scenarios. The striking contrast clearly shows how deeply cultural values and societal structures profoundly shape both parenting styles and the very nature of the humor derived from those experiences. The jokes we make, really, across all cultures are ultimately a mirror to our deepest cultural assumptions, our anxieties, and our societal structures.
Okay, so we've journeyed through the intricate history, the profound psychology, the various modern manifestations of this pervasive comedic trope. Now feels like the time to engage in some critical analysis. What are the significant strengths, the benefits of this kind of comedy? And on the flip side, what are its potential pitfalls, its dangers that we maybe need to be mindful of?
Okay, on the strength side, this comedy is incredibly powerful and it's multifaceted. Firstly, it builds profound solidarity among diasporic communities. By highlighting shared experiences, even those that are challenging or frustrating, it creates an immediate, visceral sense of us. It fosters a deep understanding, a connection among people who might otherwise feel isolated in their unique bicultural journey.
Feeling seen.
Exactly. It validates their experiences, makes them feel seen and understood. Secondly, it powerfully normalizes cross-cultural understanding for both insiders and outsiders. For those within the Desi community, it validates their everyday experiences, their internal struggles. For outsiders, it offers an accessible, often humorous window into the nuanced complexities of Desi family life, breaking down barriers, fostering empathy. And thirdly, and this is crucial, it actively catalyzes honest talk about very heavy, often taboo topics. Things like mental health, intergenerational trauma, the pressure of expectations. By making these sensitive topics approachable through humor, it significantly lowers the barrier to discussing issues that might otherwise remain hidden, unspoken, or deeply stigmatized within families.
So this isn't just about superficial laughs then, it's about building genuine bridges, fostering deeper empathy, creating a common language for expressing complex, often difficult feelings that transcend individual experiences. It's almost like a form of collective therapy.
Precisely. That's a good way to think about it. However, we must also, with equal candor, acknowledge the inherent weaknesses and dangers of this type of humor.
Okay, what are those?
Firstly, it risks oversimplification of incredibly complex and diverse family dynamics. As we've said, not every Desi parent-child relationship fits the comedic stereotype. Many are incredibly supportive, adaptable, nurturing. Reducing this rich diversity to a few predictable punchlines can flatten the reality, overshadow the unique experiences of countless families. Secondly, it can, if appropriated or misunderstood, feed harmful stereotypes, particularly if outsiders consume these jokes without understanding the nuance, the underlying context, or the profound affection that often exists within these relationships, even amidst the tension.
Right, context is key.
Crucial. Without this context, it can unfortunately perpetuate one-dimensional, sometimes even racist, portrayals. And finally, in some cases, it sometimes inadvertently trivializes real pain. While humor is an undeniable coping mechanism, relying on it exclusively or using it to dismiss genuine struggles can potentially undermine the seriousness of issues like emotional neglect, severe academic pressure leading to burnout, or genuine familial discord that extends far beyond mere cultural differences and requires deeper intervention.
This highlights that very real tightrope walk again, doesn't it? That creators, consumers, everyone involved must constantly navigate. It's a powerful and valuable tool, as we've explored, but like any powerful tool, it needs to be wielded with careful intention, critical reflection, and a deep understanding of its potential impact.
Indeed. The overall benefit is clear and compelling. Humor humanizes what could otherwise be very heavy, intensely complex, emotionally charged topics. It makes them digestible, relatable, even enjoyable to discuss, opening doors to connection and understanding. However, the inherent danger lies in thoughtless, uncritical recycling. If these jokes are repeated without critical reflection, without acknowledging their evolving context, or without appreciating the underlying complexities, they can unfortunately freeze cultures in old cliches, preventing a more nuanced, evolving understanding and dialogue about the vibrant, dynamic, ever-changing nature of Desi communities and immigrant experiences.
So it risks becoming static rather than dynamic. So what does all this mean for you, the listener, as you encounter these jokes, maybe in your daily life on social media? It's about recognizing the profound power of humor, isn't it? understanding its immense capacity for good, for building connection, validating experience, sparking conversation, but also acknowledging its potential for harm if not wielded with awareness and empathy. It's about being an informed consumer, maybe even an informed contributor to these cultural narratives. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into things Desi parents say, it feels worth reflecting on something truly profound. This isn't just, a fleeting collection of punchlines for a stand-up routine or a viral TikTok trend. It feels like something far more significant, something much deeper.
I agree. It is, in essence, an oral archive of survival, adaptation, and profound resistance. These seemingly simple, often humorous phrases are like living historical documents. They capture the essence of an immigrant journey, the immense sacrifices made, the unwavering hopes held, the cultural battles fought and ultimately somehow navigated across multiple generations. They encapsulate the enduring spirit of communities tirelessly redefining themselves in new lands, embodying resilience and ingenuity in the face of immense change.
An oral archive, I like that. And as South Asian communities continue this dynamic process of redefining themselves in global diasporas, this phenomenon poses a central, absolutely fascinating question for the future, doesn't it? Can we, as the younger generations, laugh at the old scripts, those familial, sometimes restrictive sayings, while simultaneously and intentionally rewriting them for a new era? It's a dynamic challenge for the next generation. To respectfully honor the past while bravely forging entirely new paths that reflect their evolving identities.
It's more than just a challenge. It feels like a profound act of cultural evolution, of self-determination. And this leads us to some truly vital questions for the future of these cultural narratives. For instance, will newer generations simply discard these old scripts entirely? Seeing them as mere relics of a past they don't fully inhabit, maybe even as problematic? Or will they, perhaps more likely, remix them? Remix them with empathy, understanding the historical and emotional context, and in doing so, create entirely new, nuanced forms of cultural expression, forms that not only bridge generational divides, but also speak to universal human experiences in fresh ways.
And what about that fascinating evolving self-awareness we touched on earlier, that idea of parents parodying themselves? Will immigrant parents increasingly begin to do that? Those who were once the subject of the jokes, will they lead to even greater self-awareness and perhaps paradoxically much stronger intergenerational bonding through shared humor?
It's possible.
Imagine the dynamic, transformative shift that such a widespread acceptance and participation could bring to family relationships.
It definitely raises an important question about how these rich cultural narratives will continue to evolve in our rapidly changing, incredibly interconnected world. How might new technologies, like advanced AI, which can now generate incredibly nuanced and culturally specific content, how might that play a role?
AI writing Desi parent jokes.
Potentially.
Oh.
Or the pervasive, borderless nature of global social media. Or even transnational social and political movements. How will these shape the next version of the joke? Could AI-generated skits become even more widespread? Perhaps even more intricately nuanced, capturing the subtle regional and class variations within communities in ways we haven't yet imagined. It's a truly fascinating cultural landscape to observe and for many to participate in. #tagoutro.
So we've truly taken a deep dive today into the multifaceted world of things Desi parents say, haven't we? Exploring its intricate layers of meaning and humor. We started by tracing its historical roots, pre-colonial family structures, the profound influences of British colonialism, its evolution through partition and migration. We then meticulously delved into those core psychological tensions, collectivism versus individualism, and critically examined how humor acts as that vital release valve, that powerful social glue for communities navigating bicultural identities. We saw its enduring relevance in modern media, explored the nuanced shift towards self-awareness even within the parental generation, and unpacked the complex controversies around whether this comedy trivializes or actually opens up essential dialogue.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. And finally, we examined specific academic perspectives, real-life examples, even comparing it to similar phenomena in other cultures, highlighting its universality in many ways. It's just so clear that what seems like a simple collection of jokes can, in fact, unlock incredibly profound insights into identity, family dynamics, and that incredible ongoing journey of adaptation and cultural evolution.
Absolutely, and maybe consider this as you go about your day. As cultures worldwide continue to blend, evolve, redefine themselves, What other seemingly simple phrases or comedic tropes from any culture, perhaps even your own, might actually be serving as vital, often unrecognized oral archives of survival and adaptation? What might your own family's money sayings, maybe their quirky habits or that oft-repeated piece of advice? What might it truly reveal about its unique history, its journey, and the silent narratives it carries across generations? The answer, if you listen closely enough, might profoundly surprise you.